began to put this idea together because I'm passionate about travel. I'm passionate about connecting people. And I'm really passionate about seeing how God's at work in the world. And so that's kind of how it kind of got started.
Well, here we are in 2026, and I know we look at our calendars, we make our plans, and often travel is a part of that. So today's guest is all about traveling, but traveling with a purpose, traveling with groups, and having your life change through the people you're traveling with and then the people that you're meeting on the journey. So I can't wait for you to hear from my guest, Diane Sivulka, who lives really close by here in San Diego, but has such a global mindset and takes these trips all over the world and changes lives every time she creates one of these trips. So thanks for being here. Can't wait for you to hear our conversation. Well, I'm joined today in the studio with Diane Sivulka, and she is amazing, another incredible guest. And I know you're going to love her story. So she runs a company called Travel on Purpose, and it's a company with the core values of education, travel, people, connection, generosity, and stewardship. And it's a for-profit company that's committed to changing the way that we travel. And they design trips that generate income, but then they give every dollar of profit directly to their nonprofit partners. So I just think she's such a perfect guest here in the new year, as I'm sure most of you, if not all of us, love to travel. And we look at the new year and think, okay, Lord, how should we use our time, our resources, and where are we going? And is it going to be for fun, or would it be actually a trip with a purpose? Of mission and serving another nonprofit. So you're going to love this conversation. And I just want to say a hearty welcome to you, Diane. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for that warm welcome. And thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely. Well, let's dive right into you telling the story of how God laid on your heart this vision to form the company Travel on Purpose.
Okay. I got started in 2020, which was kind of a strange year to start a travel company, right? But I found myself in 2020 kind of at a crossroads. I had just finished reading Halftime by Bob Buford. You might be familiar with that book. And I was inspired because I turned 50. I had stepped out of a role that I had had with a global nonprofit. And I just didn't know what was next for me. And something that my husband has always said to our boys is, what are you good at? What are you passionate about? And how are you going to let God use that for good in the world? And so in a year where things really slowed down and there was more time to read and dream and go for long walks and think, I began to put this idea together because I'm passionate about travel. I'm passionate about connecting people. And I'm really passionate about seeing how God's at work in the world. And so that's kind of how it kind of got started. And early 2021 is when I officially began. And, I became a full-fledged travel company with all of the accreditations that are required for that, and started an LLC and the trademark and the logo and the graphics and the website and all of that. And we launched our first, it was still kind of difficult to travel in 2021, but that was the beginning of our group trips. And primarily we're doing group trips for women. And it was September of 21, we led our first trip for a group of women to Guatemala. and from there, it's just taken off.
Wow. And wasn't there, I remember having a conversation with you a little while back, and maybe this is a good time to do a little shout out for the Barnabas group in San Diego, because that is where we first met. And I know you serve on their board. The Barnabas group is an organization started by Bob Shank and Jim West. And we spotlight different ministry partners, and we'll have business people and ministry people in the room. We meet quarterly, and the ministries will present what they're doing, and then everyone in the room can tell people how they want to help them and pray for them or support them or give them ideas. So I remember meeting you, and then I remember part of your story also being that you had been doing all these trips, but then your husband saying, but you need to make money. Like, you need to figure out a way to pay for all this travel. And, so it's helping everybody in that sense. And so with your marketing background, if anyone, goes to your website of Travel on Purpose, it's so beautiful. So you can just
Oh,
see your
thanks.
skills. So gorgeous there. But that must have been a big step for you. Like, how did that feel, stepping into this unknown territory of, starting an LLC and going down that road?
It felt very difficult, actually. My initial career was in education. I was a middle school teacher for a number of years. And then from there, we homeschooled our boys. We started world schooling. And during that time, I was doing travel writing and then a lot of volunteer work with my local church. And so there were a lot of different things, but never a business owner and never running something like this. And so a tool that somebody had pointed me towards, I don't know if you've heard of this before, but Christy Wright wrote a book. It's like a workbook called Business Boutique. And it's a really
Mm,
simple, basic start, but it was like a workbook, like how do you start a business? And it could be anything
great.
from, some business that you might run on Etsy or whatever. But I found
Hmm.
the workbook pages very helpful to try to start to pull it all together. But it was
That's a great shout
yeah,
out.
really good.
Hmm.
But it was very intimidating. And I have to be honest, I learned a lot of things the hard way. I call it a dumb tax, just mistakes I made. And even going back to that first trip in September of 21, not only did I not make any money, but I lost money. That trip cost me money. And my husband was so patient and so kind. He runs a very successful business and he pretty much supported Travel on Purpose for a good solid, maybe year and a half. And I
Uh-huh.
remember, and this is maybe what you're referring to when you mentioned this earlier, but I remember one day he said, "Diane, can we just have a little conversation?" He's like, "I really believe
Hmm.
in what you're doing. It's awesome, but I'm just wondering, like, I feel like I've given you a really good runway, and and I'm just wondering, when are you going to start to, sustainably
Be
keep
profitable,
this
yes, and
this thing
sustainable.
going?"
Hmm.
you know and it has been tricky. It is a for-profit business, but it's really a passion project of mine, and so my
Right.
goal is to give everything away. And so once all the bills are paid, then we look to see, well, who did we partner with that year, who are the organizations that we've spent time with, both through travel and also through our book club, and then we want to give it away. Uh
So
and
beautiful.
it's been so fun, actually, to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And so when you said that you learned, the quote, dumb tax, as we all have many of those in our
Mhm.
lives, what did you feel like you needed to sort of pivot away from, or iterate? Did you have to, like, charge more for each person to attend, or choose different airlines and hotels, or how did you solve that problem?
Oh gosh, I would say it's probably a little bit of all the above. I think what's really hard when you're in a position like that where you feel inadequate, you know what you're good at and you know what you're capable of because of past experiences. But when you delve into a brand new area and you're face to face with all kinds of things that are completely different than what you've done before. I mean, I've planned travel for years for our family and for our friends, but it's also very different when you do it from as a business and when you're doing it
Right.
for groups, because most of the travel that we do are for groups ranging from,
Hmm.
they can range from 12 people up to 20 people, and so that's a very different dynamic. But and I know that there were times where I felt like I was faking it, like faking it till I made it, kind of like an imposter, that imposter syndrome, like those voices that say, "What are you doing?" Like you didn't even clear that last trip. And for me, the hardest part was in the finances. I am not a bookkeeper. I'm not an accountant. I
Mhm.
do love details. And so
Mhm.
it's been a learned skill. And it's also been a beautiful thing to see how God has brought people into my life. He's brought tools into my life that have helped me
Sure.
grow in this area. And now I think it's kind of fun. Um, but it's
Uh-huh.
definitely been an area where I was probably most ill prepared for doing this work. Yeah.
Well, I love it though because that's the thing. It's like if he's calling us to something, he will provide. And then you didn't anticipate you would even meet these amazing people who help to do things that you're probably not as good at. And you can focus on what you're good at and they can bring in their strengths. And then you guys can literally change the world through this company because I love the title, Travel on Purpose. And I think so many times, like, we want to get out of our comfort zone. We want to get out of our bubble. And then you've already curated the experience for women. So tell us more about that.
Sure. So we have, if you go to our website, you'll see that we have mainly two different types of trips. And one is the cultural immersion, and the other one's the pilgrim journey. So let me talk a bit about the cultural immersion because that is where we started. And I refer back to the Guatemala trip, which, by the way, we've done that Guatemala trip now about 12 times. So it's a lot in a short number of years. Um,
That's
it is
amazing.
amazing. But and by the way, and a shout out to Barnabas too, because the partner that we've had, the do good partners, what I like to call them, that we have in Guatemala is somebody that I met at the Barnabas group, and they're
Oh, that's
working
wonderful.
with young ladies in Guatemala who have suffered sexual abuse, and they have a beautiful program that's a combination of the gospel and the latest in neuroscience. And they're working with lawyers and social workers that just help restore those girls' lives and give them a bright future. And so we've been able to go and spend a day meeting the staff and learning what they do and how they do it. And we're not really even volunteering. It's more of like a learning journey. But
Mhm.
anyway, so anyway, that was a little sidetrack, but that is
Love that.
but since
Hmm.
we're on the topic of Guatemala, let me go ahead and just mention
Yes,
more
for
things.
sure.
So, a purposeful trip with Travel on Purpose means that, yes, we are spending time with a do good partner. We want to learn if we're going to go to these places around the world, wherever they may be, and have our vacation there. I think there's a couple of things that we need to do to really be travelers that are traveling in the best way possible. And so one of
Yes.
those is to find out what are the challenges that people in that part of the world face. And then
Hmm.
who is there doing something about it? And so that's where
Hmm.
a partner organization like Kids Alive International comes in, like that I just mentioned.
Hmm.
But there's also a whole lot of other things that we want to be doing if we're good travelers. And one of those things is we want to be really mindful about where we stay, where we eat, who we hire for our activities, and those kind of things. Because we want to make sure that the travel dollars that we're spending are staying in those communities, that those
Hmm. Love
communities are
that.
being uplifted. So we're looking to
Hmm.
partner with local tour operators, locally owned boutique hotels, locally owned restaurants, things like that. One of the things that we love is called community based tourism. And this is where we have a chance to be in people's homes, whether it be for a cooking class or a
Neat.
weaving class. These are things that we
Hmm.
get to do in Guatemala. We get to spend a half of a day with a family of coffee farmers, and that means getting invited into their home. We go out to their coffee farm and we see how coffee's grown. We understand the cycle of what happens from a plant to a flower to a bean, to our cup eventually, and what the
Yes.
process is like.
Right.
And so a lot of things like that are what I find is that when people get home from a cultural immersion trip, like Guatemala, we also do Sri Lanka and India and Kenya and Uganda and Peru and all kinds of amazing destinations. But what people always talk about when they get home from a trip like that is they talk about the people they got to know. And that's that connection
Yes.
that mutual community building, mutual flourishing that's so important. And, when you go to places where you get to experience epic things, of course, those are wonderful. And of course, you carry those memories home with you. But more than that, you carry home the memory of the conversations that you had and the people that you met.
So, so true. I was just at a conference and a guest who was on my podcast in November. Her name is Elisa Huber. She's a generation two, her generation one parents founded Hope International.
Oh,
And yes, and so she talked about traveling overseas to Africa and then bringing their three little daughters. And her 3 year old, talking about what you're talking about right now in Guatemala with the connection piece or any of your other trips, her little 3 year old had that experience and she met a little girl, and the little girl was three also. And so she told her Mom, I just met a new friend who's three. And the little one she met was African American, and then the little girl of Elisa's daughter is Caucasian. And she showed a picture on the screen when she was telling the story of the backs of these little girls walking down the dirt road holding hands. And now Elisa said when she gets back here in the States, she hears her daughter showing that picture to her friends and saying, "This is my new friend I met in Uganda. I'm on the right." And
oh, that's so cute.
it's so precious.
I love that.
I loved it too, but that's what she took away at age 3. And you're absolutely right. We remember the relationships and the people. So that's so beautiful how it just weave that into your trips.
Yeah, it's the best part. I think about our India trip and, you know, ideas of seeing the Taj Mahal at sunrise, that might attract people to the trip. But without fail, when the trip comes to an end and people are sharing what meant the most to them, nobody mentions the Taj Mahal. Instead, people
Uh-huh.
mention when we got to go to that woman's house and she got to tell us her story and she taught us how to make marsala chai tea in her kitchen. It's like that's what people remember.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
and what I love about travel is that that's good for everybody. It's good for the traveler
Absolutely.
because the traveler, it makes us realize that the world is filled with people that are more like us than are different than us. At the end of the day, we
Hmm.
care about our kids and we care about our communities. But it's also the other thing that's so incredibly beautiful is that it encourages the people that we spend time with because it lets them know that they are valuable, that they are important, and that we want to know about their lives. We care about their
Right.
culture and their history. And so it's just this, especially you get a bunch of women together who can have that experience. It's incredibly rich and meaningful. And I very often will hear people say that this trip was life changing. And
Wow.
so I love that. And then let me just briefly mention the other kind of trip.
Absolutely.
So
Yes.
the other thing that we do, and we didn't initially start with pilgrim journeys, but it's something we added 2 years ago. And we now do pilgrim journeys too. Our average traveler is a woman between the age of let's say like 40 and 60, although we get
Okay.
younger and we also get older. Um,
Sure.
but that's kind of our average. And so something that's become very popular, especially with women like, let's say in their 50s and 60s, is to go on a walking pilgrimage.
Hmm.
And so that's
Hmm.
something that we added. And that just means that we just had our Camino de Santiago. We walked the Portuguese way to Santiago, and we've got other trips that are similar to that. So there's the spiritual aspect of it. There's the quieting down and the slowing
Hmm.
down and having a more thoughtful and purposeful journey. And it's going to be a little bit less
Yes.
busy than our cultural immersion trips, but
Hmm.
still
Hmm.
incredibly meaningful. And even in those, we make sure that we're still partnering with a do good organization. So, yeah, we got to spend time at a retreat center in Portugal, who is part of Crew in Europe. They
Uh-huh.
are
Yeah.
providing just a really restful place for pastors and missionaries and people who need a rest. And we got to go and spend a couple of days there and learn about their community work and the restful work that they provide. And they provided us a restful space to really get our hearts and our minds and our bodies prepared for the journey that we were about to take. So
That is beautiful. So, how many miles did you all do in how many days?
we did, to earn the Compostela in Santiago, you have to do, and if you're walking, you have to do a minimum of 100 kilometers. So we did 125, which is roughly 86 miles. And we did that over the course of 7 days.
Okay, okay, that's so similar because in 2024, I did that same exact section of the Camino, and I went with a group called Freedom Challenge.
Oh, you're kidding me.
And
You're kidding me.
no,
Okay, Kim, I did not know you were on that trip. I'm going to tell you something
yes,
that's going to blow your mind. You guys were
what?
one day behind us.
No,
Yes. And
seriously, and all the rain that we had.
yes, yes. And I only know that because a friend of mine texted me and she said, "Do you follow Freedom Challenge? Because it looks like they're where you guys are." So then I started following the
Wow,
Instagram and I could see you were exactly one day behind us. And
that is
yeah, the
crazy.
rain last year was unbelievable.
Unbelievable.
It was terrible. I have to say, this year we got, or in 2025, we got so lucky. We
Wow.
got so lucky. It was beautiful weather, and you just never know. You can't predict
You
something
know,
like that.
no. Oh, that's so fun. Okay, so the part I loved about that experience that I had with Freedom Challenge was we raised 400,000 and had around 40 women, and then we gave it out to a number of anti-trafficking organizations because that's what they focus on all around the world. And actually a couple of the gals went to visit one of the partners in Greece after we did that experience, but they also divided that trip up into three groups. So we had one group that started the very beginning of September and literally did 4 weeks,
Yeah,
and
in
then we had a
Lisbon,
group
I
that cut.
think. Uh-huh. And then
And then
Porto.
2 weeks, and then I was only a part of the last group, which I think we had the most people who could take time off work to do that 1 week, and do just like you said, to get the minimum of the 100 kilometers
Mhm.
of the
Yeah.
official certificate. So that's so great, but it is it's so exciting, because like you said, it's a blend of the community you're walking with, and then you are slowing down and you're able to use your body in a physical way to just really take step after step, and it clears your mind. You're in beautiful places and beautiful spaces. So I love that you added that piece. I know that there's also, within this past last year of 2025, you had many people doing the pilgrimage in Rome, going to Rome, because every 25 years it's the year of Jubilee. So they were expecting 34 million pilgrims to descend upon Rome, and some walking, some getting there other ways, but it certainly has become more of a thing, I
Mhm.
think. To
Mhm.
you have that movie with Martin
Yeah.
Sheen, The Way, and he comes down over the French Alps, and that was my first exposure to what it was. But that's great. That's so great that you just added these two components. So if somebody is listening to this podcast and they want to be a part of one of your trips in 2026, can you walk us through if they could sign up for something that's already existing, or if, let's say, they've got a group of 10
Mhm.
girlfriends and they want to create their own trip, how does that look?
Yeah, so we do both of those things. If you're listening and you're curious and want to know more, I have to say one of the best ways to stay connected is to get on our email list. And something will pop up when you go to the website, or you can just go to the contact page and do that. But when we have a new trip that comes out, we let I send a Saturday email every week that has uplifting information and just travel tips and different things like that. But that's where we're going to let people know that we have a new trip coming out. And then beyond that, if you see on our pages where we list what our cultural immersion and pilgrim journeys look like, and there's an opportunity to get on an interest list, I also highly recommend that if there's a particular trip that you're interested in, because at this point we are a small company, and I am not the only one leading tours. We have a small team that's leading tours, but our trips sell out very quickly. And in fact, most of our trips are now selling out in less than 24 hours. And so those trips, those brand new trips will go to the interest list first. And then number two, then they go to the Saturday email. And then number three, they go to like social media or that kind of thing. So that's really important. But I'm glad that you also mentioned the customized self-guided trip, because that's also something we're doing. And we just had a group of women who did the Camino on their own, and they didn't have me or anyone from Travel on Purpose with them. Well, how's that possible? Well, it's very possible because we have all of our local tour operators that we work with. And so from the moment they landed at the airport, they got picked up. Everything was arranged, where they were sleeping, the porter service to move their luggage. And then, of course, I'm not there to pay the bill for their dinner, but then that means that meals aren't included in the package. But then what we do is we provide like a 10-page travel packet.
Suggestions.
Yeah, that says, these are our favorite places to eat in Tui. These are our favorite places to eat, wherever it is. And, we also provide things like a packing list, and and then we offer real-time support should they need anything. So yeah,
that's so great.
Those trips are becoming more popular. I think for a few reasons. One is that people want to, if you've got a small group of women, let's say a Bible study or something, and you want to have that experience with them, that's a great way to do it. Also, when you do a private self-guided trip, you get to pick when you want to go, and you also get to pick your budget. You can say, hey, for accommodations, we want to keep it mid-level, or we're more interested in, some kind of a budget. So it's really nice that it can all be customized in that way.
That's so beautiful. How also, I love that you're pouring back into those local people that you already have a great relationship with. And it's also broadening your business, and they're still getting paid even when you're not there. You've already figured out all the details of a complex trip. So why not do rinse and repeat and let other people just step into that and get the benefits? So that's a beautiful way of growing.
Absolutely. And that's also why we don't do every destination in the world. If somebody wrote me and said, I want a trip to Bali, I'd be like, well, we don't do Bali. And it's like,
you can only do so much.
The relationships are so important. And those, that's what makes it really special. You really feel like you're being picked up, by a friend, and you're going to a place that knows me and knows Travel on Purpose. So.
No, that's just really great. So tell us about the women on your trip who really afterwards, she says, this changed my life. Like, why would you say the kind of women who maybe has really not traveled very much, sometimes has to even apply for the passport before the trip because it's her first international trip abroad.
Yeah.
Why would you kind of recommend a woman like that also joining your trips rather than the seasoned traveler?
Yeah. So we do get all kinds of travelers, and we also get a lot of solo travelers. There's a lot of women who want to travel, but they might not have a friend who is interested or who can afford it. And I want to say that a third of our travelers on every trip are coming completely by themselves. And what
That's
they like,
so beautiful too.
What they like about it is that they know there's going to be the safety with the group. And even though they're by themselves, they're not by themselves for long, because within 24 hours, we have formed ourselves into a family unit, and, and they're just making all kinds of new friends. But it's, when I say transformational, sometimes I even hate to say that because it sounds like I'm doing something. I honestly, Kim, think that it's really a work of God. I feel like my job is to set the table, to organize and prepare this beautiful experience. And by the way, sometimes things aren't beautiful because they don't go.
Sometimes it rains.
Exactly. And people get blisters the size of,
Yes.
But I feel like my job is to set the table. And then what happens beyond that, like what God is able to do in people's lives beyond that is completely up to him, and also completely up to the person and the openness that they have. And the transformation can look different. On the Pilgrim journeys, people are often wrestling with something that they're personally dealing with. They might be in a transitional stage in their life. Maybe they're moving from one career to another, or maybe they're saying goodbye to something that they lost that they didn't expect to lose, and it's been heartbreaking. But and I also have to say, not everybody goes on a pilgrim journey with a big life thing. Sometimes you just show up
Sure.
and you're not even sure what will happen, but you
But
open
you're supposed to be there.
yeah,
Hmm.
open-handed. You're like, I'm here for this experience and to see what it is. And when people come through that, they do, because we live such fast-paced lives with very little margin in them, they do come away with something that they feel like was just meant for them. And so that can look a lot of different ways. I think on the cultural immersion trips, when people talk about transformation, it's often in how they see themselves in the world, because we're going to places where we do come face to face with some poverty, and we do come face to face with people who maybe are even people of faith but who live very differently than we do. It forces us to dig down deeper, to come face to face with, well, what do we believe about, what does it
Hmm.
mean that God is good, and what does it mean that,
Hmm.
that he loves me, and he loves also a woman who lives in a shack and who's having a hard time putting food on the table for her family. What does it also mean that he loves her and that her life is blessed because she has
Yes.
put her faith in Jesus? And that is, sometimes you can't really even put your head around that or understand that kind of stuff until you go and you experience these things.
Uh-huh.
And
It's so true.
yeah, so I mean, it's hard to simplify it, and I feel like it's different for
Hmm.
every person, but for every traveler who goes with an open heart and an open mind, be ready, because
Hmm.
something transformational can happen.
So, so well said, Diane. At which trips and which places? Just name like maybe three or four of them that will be opening, and it might, like you said, sell out in 24 hours. But where are some of those places that are coming up that people could possibly?
So this year in 2026, we have our French Camino. It's a wonderful trip for women. And it doesn't go all the way to Santiago. It's a different model, but we stay in these beautiful monasteries in the south of France, and we do walks on the Camino along with a lot of other beautiful cultural experiences, and then come back to the monastery and the abbey that we're staying at. So that's in June. We go to East Africa in June, but that trip sells out very quickly. We will have another Peru trip that will be in late August, early September. Our Camino de Santiago, the traditional, will be in September. We'll have Morocco in January of 27. And we've got some other ones that we're adding as well, but those I can say with certainty that you'll
Hmm.
see those
Hmm.
back on the docket. We'll also have a trip in early 27 for Guatemala as well. And I also have to say, I don't know how many male listeners you have, but we have started opening up a couple trips every year that are for women and men. And the reason we did that is because we get so many repeat travelers, and we heard from a lot of women who said, I really want to go on another trip, and I'd really love for my husband to come and experience it too. And so just a couple. I will say that most of our
Yeah, for
trips are women
sure.
only, but we do a couple that men are invited as well.
Oh, that is beautiful. Well, in 2024, my husband and I did a 3-day trip with a couple in Scotland, and we put it all together ourselves. But to your point, like we wanted I had done the Camino, and then I wanted my husband to go along with me on the next trip. We used a company called Max Adventure, MAC apostrophe S
Mhm.
Adventure, and that's also out there. If the person listening, just wants, let's say, in my situation, just one other couple and you're not even putting together a group, that company helps you identify where you want to go. And then you just tell them the dates and they will just put it together for you. They'll move your luggage. And so
That's
that's even,
fantastic.
I know there are just a lot of options that are out there right now. I think technology has really opened up everything. I remember traveling, honestly, when I was 16 years old with my cousins and some other people, and the five of us backpacked around Europe for 8 weeks. And I was literally 16 years old, sleeping on rooftops. And I look back and think, wow, my parents were brave to let me go on that trip. But one of my cousins is a guy, and he was kind of our protector on the trip. And it all went well, but we went to like 13 different countries in that amount of time. But we didn't have cell phones. Like
Yeah.
we didn't have any of the tech today for safety or anything that's, even the bank accounts and accessing the funds and all of that. So what we can do today with technology, it's just a game changer with, you always hear that phrase, the world is flat, but how we're all able to see, like you said, we're also similar. And, even though this person has this passport and this one over here, there's just so much that we have in common. And travel allows us to just be a part of it and not see it on the television or the movies. And you come home, like I remember getting on the plane when we did the Camino with that group of women, and I kind of wanted to say to the airplane, like, do you know what we just did? Like, we just walked in the rain, for 6 days, and we did 100 kilometers, and
That's
you
why
put
you
your
keep
backpack.
That's why you keep the shell on your backpack as long as possible, so everybody will know.
It's so true. It's like the 26.2 on your car, when someone does a marathon. Well, I just want to encourage anyone listening to take the next step. We think about this podcast as how generosity is interwoven into 5 areas: faith, family, fitness, finance, and friendship. And I think you can clearly see the generosity component as Diane looks at the profits that are left over after paying her bills and figures out which nonprofits will receive those, and just the generosity of keeping those local people employed even when she's not there. And so would love for you to encourage, like, support her organization, bring a friend, and try Travel on Purpose, and your life will be changed. So thank you just for all your hard work to get to where you are now. And it feels like you're just going to keep growing and getting new partners and other people leading the trip, so you can keep expanding and giving more people this incredible opportunity. So
thank you.
All right. Well, anything else you want to add before we wrap up, in terms of the woman who's listening who might think, I would love to do that, but I've never hiked or I've never done a Camino. I'm a little nervous. What would you say to that woman?
I would say that if you want to travel internationally and you're nervous to do it, give me a call and I will talk you into it. It'll change your life, and it'll change it in the best possible way. We have to travel. I think, and like, there's travel at all price points. So travel is accessible. It's an important thing to do, I think, to be a citizen of the world and to understand and see how people live all over the world. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But I'll make you feel very comfortable.
That's great. Well, thanks for being generous and just offering that they can reach out to you and they can reach you on your website and take the next step. So I love that. Okay, well, what would you like to share in terms of favorite Bible verse, book that you're reading, and any recent bargain?
Okay. So my favorite Bible verse is Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. And I think it's just been a guiding light for all of my life. I remember when I got my very first Bible and my dad wrote it in the cover of my Bible. And since then, it's a guiding light for sure. A favorite book. So we have the Travel on Purpose book club. You can read about that if you go to our website. We go to 4 different destinations a year. So I'm just going to mention the one that we're currently reading because
totally, that's great.
So right now we're traveling. It's armchair traveling to Lebanon, and we're reading a book called An Unnecessary Woman. And it's a fiction piece about a woman who, during the Beirut Civil War, spends pretty much her entire life in her apartment in Beirut, or the Lebanese Civil War. She spends her entire time in her apartment in Beirut. And it's an interesting sketch of a woman living during that time period and what life was like. So anyway, but I love the book club. And if you're a reader, you might want to check out our book club. Okay. And then a bargain. So I'm mentioning this because I just ordered this yesterday. So it feels like the most, current for me and my situation right now. But We will soon be leaving on our Sri Lankan tour, which also has a lot of physical fitness because we are hiking the Peco Trail, which is a beautiful series of trails from the colonial days of the tea production, the tea growing.
Mm.
Anyhow, all that to say, you cannot wear spandex. It's culturally offensive. To some places in the world. I mean, we live in it, right?
Sure.
But it's not appropriate for some places. And so we talked to the group about you need to wear more of the loose fitting, like hiking type pants. And so here's my bargain. Eddie Bauer often has sales, and not only that, but their hiking pants are less, if you're a little curvy like I am, their hiking pants are less tight and like straight and restrictive. So definitely check out their sales. They're always having sales. They
Interesting. That's
have
great.
fantastic active wear clothing options.
I did not. I mean, I know they have like those flannel line pants that are great in Colorado, Wyoming, but I don't think of them as like for hiking pants. So that's a great call out. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Well, thanks for your time, Diane. Thanks for your generosity. God bless you on all these trips, all the lives that will be changed through the women that are on your trips and those women and individuals and couples and spouses and men who are all going to be changed through these adventures. And I love that you also just said that all you do is set the table and it's really God who does the work and does the transformation. So I encourage you, listener, to hopefully, in this 2026 time, some form of travel, some form of physical exercise that you can just see what God has for you on the trail. And maybe it's the Camino in Spain, maybe it's the Appalachian Trail, or maybe it's just a 5K in your local, town. But it's great. It's great to do. And as we all continue to grow and just explore new opportunities, travel is top of the list for many of us. So I just really love how you took the time to share how you built this company and how lives are really being impacted through it. So thank you so much, Diane. God bless you.
Thank you, Kim. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for joining us today on the Generous Girl podcast. We're so glad that you're here. And if you know of someone that you think needs to be a guest on this podcast, please reach out to us. New episodes are released every other week, and you can follow us on YouTube and on all platforms. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you next time.